The morning meeting. You got the morning meeting. Welcome. Sean, Dan, and I are here to run you through the day with a lot going on and so many topics that we're going to have to give short shrift to some really important things like potentially World War III. But we'll do that, and then we will take your questions and comments. If you're here on the two-way platform, please, as Jack and Professor Kenny have already done, raise your hand if you'd like to be part of this. I'm not going to say we need three new people today, but we sort of do. So please, if you've never asked a question before, join in. If you're watching on X or YouTube, don't raise your hand and don't say it with me now. Put smack in the chat. Everything you write, every thought in your head, we are the thought police, should be radiating peace, love, and understanding and a presumption of grace for all. Every voice welcome here. And here we go off to the races. Uh, Reminder first, what they used to call in the business housekeeping. It's probably not politically correct to call it that. You've got less than an hour if you want to
Oh,
submit.
wait. If it's not politically correct, I'll let my wife know that she can no longer tell me to do housekeeping because
Okay.
I get told to do it quite often.
Yeah. Uh, well, anyway, uh, you've got less than an hour if you want to submit questions. The People's Poll to be unveiled on this program on this coming Monday, national poll of 1,000 people. Go to my Substack for the link to the Google form to submit questions. I'm told by David Burrell we've been overwhelmed with excellent questions. So uh, uh, we don't need more. But if you want to get in under the wire, you've got during this program to multitask to submit your questions. Dan submitted questions. Sean, have you submitted any questions?
Mm.
Maybe
This is
you should
very
multitask.
reminiscent of high school. Mr. Spicer,
Yeah.
I don't see
Yeah.
your homework in the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah. Mr. Spicer, please get a question in just for marketing purposes.
Okay.
You can write one right here on the air, and maybe somebody from WIC is watching and they'll write it down.
Or just
Uh,
crowd surf it. Put it in the chat, Sean. Take the
yeah.
best one and give him
Yeah.
credit.
All right. Schedule today. The president, let's see, White House pool. Nothing interesting. National Review Online scripts. We've grown used to this. The president today, Intel briefing at 11. Once again, I'll point out if Joe Biden's briefing was 11, people would say, "Oh, he's an old man. He starts late," but no one's saying that. 12:30, he participates in the swearing in of David Perdue to head to China for being confirmed to be our envoy to China, a position George H.W. Bush once held when it was not an ambassadorship, but he was the senior diplomat in Beijing. Back then, we often called it Peking, named after a duck. 1 o'clock, simultaneous. The president has lunch with the vice president and uh, Caroline Levitt briefs. In theory, if you look at the schedule and take it at face value, we were not seeing the president yesterday after a marathon, a veritable orgy of public appearances at the White House where he talked about all manner of things over and over again. We'll see if that holds. In the absence of the president's public appearances, the vice president's speech occurring in this hour, maybe we'll dip into it. He's speaking to Ambassador Wolfgang Ischinger, the president of the Foundation Council of the Munich Security Conference in Washington. You recall the vice president's speech in Europe to the same group caused quite a European kerfuffle. We'll see what he says today. And of
And,
course,
You
and
know
his
the
text
ambassador's
message.
name. Hold on. Did you know that about? I looked at that last night and I was like, thank God Mark's going to say it, not me.
yeah, I found a YouTube clip where
Okay,
he
thank you. Okay, that's
self introed, and of course Caroline's briefing at 1. Those will produce some news. 3 o'clock at the Treasury Department, the man of the moment, who we'll discuss in this episode, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, will chair a meeting of the so-called Big Six. That's Bessent, Kevin Hassett, the head of the NEC, and the Republican chairs of the applicable tax committees, as well as Thune and Johnson, to continue to hash through reconciliation. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. Earlier in the day, 10 o'clock Eastern, right as this program's going off the air, Secretary Bessent will be testifying before Financial Services about some international mumbo jumbo, but he'll be asked all manner of questions about tariffs. And there are a lot of cabinet secretaries on the Hill today testifying about their budgets, as well as FBI Director Patel is up there in addition. 2 o'clock, the Fed announces whether they're going to raise rates. The betting is that they will not. And the Fed chair, lame duck that he is, will hold his now regular press conference after the announcement of the rate decision at 2:30 Eastern time. All right. So Scott Bessent last night on Fox News, shortly after the Treasury Department said that he was classic press release. It said, well, he's going to Switzerland to meet with the head of Switzerland, who's a president, not a prime minister, although maybe they have both. And then the last paragraph said, oh, by the way, while he's in Geneva, the Chinese chief economic czar happens to be there, so they'll meet as well. Here is Secretary Bessent talking about this 105.
The world has been coming to the U.S., and China has been the missing piece. I was going to be in Switzerland to negotiate with the Swiss. Turns out the Chinese team is traveling through Europe, and they will be in Switzerland also. So we will meet on Saturday and Sunday. And look, we have shared interest that this isn't sustainable, as I said before, especially on the Chinese side. And 145%, 125% is the equivalent of an embargo. We don't want to decouple. What we want is fair trade.
So maybe this is just a sideshow, but the president keeps saying, well, they're talking to China. Bessent, as recently as yesterday, said they weren't. Now they're going through what almost everybody, including I see some people in the chat, are suggesting is a charade. The notion that he's going to Europe to negotiate with the Swiss and the Chinese just happen to be there seems a bit far-fetched to many. Sean, why is it that they're pretending like this is just like a happy coincidence?
Because it's the Chinese, and they want to, I think, do this delicately and de-escalate. But I don't really give a. I honestly think the logistics are pointless in the sense that the outcome, and this is what I've said over and over again. Who cares? The bottom line is Scott Bessent and Donald Trump are delivering for America, and they walk away from this meeting with real deliverables that get us greater market access, take away some of the non-tariff barriers, whether it's IP protection or whatever. That's a win for America and our consumers and our businesses. And so I think the concern about the logistics and the semantics of the meeting and who went where, when, why is pointless.
I largely agree. I said sideshow, but I do find it connected potentially to how significant the meeting might be.
But I will stand by.
Maybe inversely, but
I will stand by this. They're going to have a meeting to talk about a work plan, and I know this sounds to many like symbols, but this is just how the Chinese work and how a lot of this diplomacy works. They will have a meeting. I believe one of the byproducts of that meeting, I still say this, will be an announcement of a meeting with President Trump. I do believe that it will be in China in late July.
I continue to believe it won't be in China, but we'll see. Dan, last night on Two-Way Tonight, you might have missed it. I believe for the first time anywhere, the concept of Bessent 28 was discussed, that he's striding the world like an economic colossus to such an extent that he could be the Republican nominee for president. Not necessarily, but how do you think this meeting is setting up for the weekend? Could it be very good or incremental? What's your perception of that?
I think the fact that they're going to start talking is a good sign, because I believe that both want to find a way to get out of this. For a White House that is as politically sophisticated and astute as they are, there isn't a single piece of data that shows this is working for them politically. Oh. It may end up, Sean, your own base is starting to come apart, and there is poll after poll after focus group after focus group. It may work, in which case it'll come right back together, rock solid. But I believe that just as the Chinese, as we're seeing signs of economic distress, Trump is seeing signs of political distress in his own party. So I think they're going to talk. Hopefully a meeting of some sort where like the real bacon gets carved up will happen. But conversation should lead to a better outcome than not talking.
I think it'd be triple delight bacon, just to be clear.
As they like to say in the financial world, past performance is no guarantee of future returns, although usually it is. Look at what he did when in a first term with USMCA, right? He said, repped up NAFTA. Canada said they'd never come to the table. They came to the table. We got a great deal. Look what he did in Panama. He went down, claimed it was an issue. Panama is now not controlled on both ends by the Chinese. Look what he did to Colombia. It works. I get the elites and the people who've done the same thing over and over again for decades get it frustrated that their little course at Colombia is going to get blown up because it shows that it's not how it always works. Trump is a different man, a different method of doing things, but he gets results. And at the end of the day, he will be rewarded because we will get more than we went into this for.
Yeah. Rand Paul, who's no Wall Street insider, was on Next Up. I interviewed him yesterday, and he was extremely specific about how every business leader in his state, even ones who you might think would applaud the tariffs, said the tariffs are not just theoretically a bad idea, but they're already hurting their businesses. And he said the same about Kentucky families. And I mean, it's possible, as Dan said, that it could all be turned around quickly. But most everybody continues to, in the business world, continues to say, turn them off as soon as possible. And every day they go forward, the more damage you're doing to the U.S. economy. But maybe Sean will be
Mark,
right.
I think, though, we got to stop saying just business people, because more and more research is emerging that regular Americans are saying we got real problems with this, and I'm not happy with Donald Trump. That is not Democrats. That is his own party saying that.
That's what Rand Paul said.
But I will say this: the way that this stuff is being framed, as I said before, is ridiculous. The idea of once people start to realize, hey, is it fair that our manufacturer?
John, you guys have been putting these messages out. Your own base isn't believing it.
I get it, but you know what?
But for 6 months you've said it. You can spin all you want, but in
he's
their
only been in
gut,
office, Dan, for 108 days. So the bottom line is, and I do think that because no one's allowed to think outside the paradoxy of the orthodoxy of what's been going on the last several decades, that free trade is known as allowing you to be a sucker. And the bottom line is, once he proves again that he's going to get results, I think people are going to say, gosh, I'm sorry. Yeah. And we'll see.
I will say this: if he gets far enough that he's allowed to prove to people that they were wrong and he was right, Scott Bessent will be a big part of it, because he is plugging the holes, reassuring the markets. The markets have been up despite everything, and that's most people I talk to say it's just a large extent because of Bessent. And you saw the futures, which were down in after close trading yesterday. As soon as it was announced that Bessent was going to meet with the Chinese, they went back up, and they're in positive territory right now, because people are hopeful, and they're hopeful not because of Lutnick, not because of Kevin Hassett, not because of Peter Navarro. As best I can tell, they're hopeful because of Scott Bessent. So we'll see. All right, there's a number of world hotspots. We could spend 2 hours on each of these. So we're just going to go quickly through them. I'll give the headline, and my colleagues will give their brief bumper sticker reaction to where we are. And we'll be talking about, I'm sure, some of these in the coming days. India and Pakistan, two longtime nuclear-armed rivals, long predicted throughout my career. Everybody said this is the hottest of hotspots. Someday it's going to explode and cause World War III. It's about as hot as it's been in many years. Dan, India, Pakistan.
We need the Indians to help with the Chinese in a trade deal. So I think we will try to help the Indians.
Sean.
I'm just concerned. I mean, when you're that close, I mean, to your point, when you're in that much of a hot spot and your finger's on the button, that concerns me. And I hope that we are engaging, especially with the Indians, on how this doesn't escalate further.
Yeah, I'm surprised the president wasn't more assertive yesterday. I predict he will be today, unless things de-escalate with Adam.
Well, I would expect some kind of call with Modi. I mean,
they
got to do something, because they can't allow this to go unchecked because of Pakistan. I mean, this thing can go quick, and unfortunately, both of them have things that you don't want to go boom.
Correct. All right. Wall Street Journal is reporting that Tulsi Gabbard has been using intel assets to spy on Greenland to figure out what's going on with their domestic politics, etc. Dan.
Curious what the Danes and the EU and NATO have to say about this.
They probably spy on us. Sean.
Look at my shocked face.
Okay. Yeah. It's always funny to me when people are shocked that the U.S. is spying on allies, because that's what we do. All right. Lots going on with Russia and nothing going on with Russia. Lots of op-ed pieces being concerned that the U.S. is about to walk away. Dan, your current thoughts on Russia, Ukraine?
Well, I don't think we're talking about walking away anymore, because we're talking about sending arms. I think I continue to ask, what are we going to do to try to get Russia to bend? Sean.
I agree with Dan. I mean, Russia, I think, overplayed its hand. It was really stupid. I was actually surprised, to be honest with you, at how stupid Putin has played this. He had an opportunity to get more than he'll ever get in Trump's quest for peace. And I think he overplayed his hand and pissed Trump off.
All right, start with Sean for these last three. Israel, 48 hours ago, said, we're done waiting around. No one's governing Gaza. We're going to go in. We're going to govern Gaza for the foreseeable future. I'm amazed at the reaction, which is almost non-existent. What's going on there?
I'm agreed. I was considering all the protests that have engulfed our campuses and communities throughout the country. The lack of reaction was sort of surprising. But I think that emboldens Netanyahu and his team to say, see, no one's really going nuts on us. So I think that this is, if you don't see action by the White House verbally and publicly, then I would say that they got it pretty close to a green light to go.
Dan.
Yeah, completely agree with Sean and you.
Yeah. Okay. Next is Iran. The nuclear talks are going to pick up in the next couple of days, I believe, maybe over the weekend. Sean, where do you think that stands?
Here's the problem. I think that there's two camps clearly in Team Trump. I believe that Iran can never be trusted. I believe that they have made it very clear when you chant death to America, then you don't sit down at a table and say, let's talk terms. I think it is in their DNA to want to hate us and to hurt us. And so I'm just not a fan of trying to figure out what kind of deal you're going to get because I don't trust them to ever uphold that deal. So I applauded the president when he withdrew from Iran. The Iran agreement, sending them pallets of cash was never a smart idea. And so I just think we need to isolate them and understand who they are and what their motives are and just go forward on that. But they're not someone who you can ever trust in a deal.
Iran's the weakest it's been in my lifetime. And I think the fact that their proxies are getting very wobbly, and we've just talked about Israel trying to, eliminate Hamas. And I think the question is, do you go for the deal to end it, or do you go for the military strike? Because they are weak right now.
Okay. Lastly, Canada. We try to be forward-looking here, so we don't need to revisit all that happened yesterday in the Oval. But Sean, what's your sense of where we're headed now with U.S.-Canada relations on trade and defense and everything else?
Never say never.
No.
I actually thought I was really impressed with how Prime Minister Carney played that yesterday. I think he had elements of being strong and forceful, of making sure that he asserted the Canadian people's position, but he did so respectfully, and he toed a very nice. I thought it was sort of like from a pitch standpoint, he was pitch perfect. He knew when to do it, but also how to do it. He didn't raise his voice. He wasn't antagonistic, but I think he made it clear to the Canadian people that he was going to stand firm. And I think part of this was a test. Trump just treated Justin Trudeau like a junior high, kid, like that you could push around. I think I think Trump wanted to sort of test his mettle to see, is this guy going to stand up a little? He's a smart technocrat. Did he have any political juice behind him? And I think Carney passed the test yesterday.
Trump, by all accounts, public and private, Trump is really impressed with Carney, likes him. As we say in Bush world, Trump thinks he's a good man, and that gives Carney a little more flexibility than he otherwise would have. All right. Got through that pretty quick. Now let's talk about something else we could spend the hour on, which is reconciliation. Most of the reporting now suggests that the moderates House Republican moderates met with the speaker yesterday, and he kind of leaned in their direction on reconciliation as it pertains to savings from Medicaid. There's a lot of technical details here about which programs might be limited or redefined or scaled back to try to get the savings level in the 500 range, if possible. Chip Roy, one of the more outspoken of the non-moderates, went on social media, 103 please, and struck back hard when he learned that the speaker seemed to be trying to tip the balance towards the moderates and basically said no. And he's arguing that the changes that they want would be bad, not just for would be bad for people who more deserving of receiving funding healthcare through Medicaid. It's all very complicated in terms of the substance. In terms of the politics, Dan, we've all said too big to fail. Failure is not an option. But Medicaid seems to continue to be the point that can't be squared. And the thing that I thought would come up eventually has come up, which is some House Republicans, both moderates and more conservatives, are saying we should not vote on a House version with Medicaid cuts until the White House and the Senate says that they'll pass that too. Because if they vote for the cuts and then it dies in the Senate, they still have the vote hung around their neck. Where do you think we stand on Medicaid and reconciliation?
Look, for all the House Democrats who remember cap and trade, that's exactly what happened. They were asked to vote on it in the House in the spring of 2009. It died in the Senate. And the number of ads run that Democrats who voted for cap and trade were going to kill the economy were too many to count. Look, the question really is becoming, who is going to fold? Is the Freedom Caucus going to get rolled, or are the moderates going to get rolled? And Johnson is just going into one room with one, sweet talking them. Then he goes to the other, sweet talks them. He keeps promising it, hoping to narrow the funnel such that there's just this like sweet spot compromise. And it's probably going to be under $1 trillion in cuts, right? We went from 5 trillion to 2 trillion to 1.5 trillion. Now they're talking about less than $1 trillion. I mean, I think they may end up at like 500 billion. Like it's just a farce. But who's going to blink?
So I will say that the funny thing is there's two other players in this equation that matter more. One is the Senate, and this is the problem where the House guys, beyond the deal that they get, I think the problem is they're like, if we get a deal, we vote on it, and then the Senate weakens everything, which is probably where this heads, then we've walked the plank and cast a vote that we're gonna eat. So I think that the key in this actually goes to my last player, which is they really need to sit with Donald Trump and say, here's the bottom line. We need to come to an agreement on what that number is going to be, what you're willing to fight for, what you're willing to, because I think a lot of these guys, the Lawlers, Mike was here last Friday, the Van Drews, et cetera, New Jersey, and a couple of the California guys are like, hey, we're not going to vote twice, potentially 3 times on something and then get rolled. So they got to, I think the bigger issue is if Johnson really wants to do this, he needs to sit down face to face with Trump and say, here's what I can do. Because Trump solves this problem more than anybody else. If Trump goes to Chip Roy and says, hey, the best deal is the following. And I said this before, I'll say it again. Donald Trump means it when he says he wants to defend these programs. He's willing to look at waste, fraud, and abuse, efficiencies, things like that. But when he talks about preserving and protecting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, he means it. He understands the political sensitivities of it. So my point would be, if you're Johnson, get down to the White House, not with his team, but with him specifically, and say, Mr. President, these are the asks. I will fight these things, but it's going to take phone calls from you and a firm position from you. And if you're, and you just tell me where you're going to end up, and then we'll fight for that. But
is he willing to own this though? Because my sense
he has to.
Well, but my sense is he likes to critique.
He does, but he has no choice. But the big six.
I agree with you guys, but
the big six will be discussing this. The challenge is there's no forcing mechanism for this intermediate decision, right? They have to make this intermediate decision in committee. It's separate from the Senate. It's separate from the president. And they're not going to get a final decision from the president or the Senate because there's no forcing mechanism for that. So that's the challenge. They're going to have to figure out how to solve it. I think.
So you guys think they missed the Memorial Day deadline?
Oh my God!
Yes.
That's
deadline. We don't know what the deadline is until Scott Bessent says what the X date is.
No. You mean Johnson's deadline, not the X deadline, right?
Well, no. But Johnson's deadline.
Tied together.
Johnson's deadline is going to have to be the X deadline, and that's Bessent yesterday said it's getting close. They're on the warning track. Good sports metaphor. But they're not there yet. All right, let's do this one quickly because we got a few more topics to get to. Thom Tillis is publicly opposed, although he's offered some wiggle room. He said he could change his mind. He's publicly opposed the president's nominee to be the U.S. Attorney in D.C., Mr. Martin. There are other senators, I'm reliably told, Republican senators, who are also opposed, who haven't come out publicly. Tillis's opposition matters a lot because he's on judiciary. They could get him out of judiciary, take him straight to the floor, even if they get an unfavorable vote in committee with Tillis and all Democrats voting no. But Tillis is taking enormous heat, as he has in the past, from MAGA online. MAGA is, I mean, I don't even need to look for the stuff. My feed is just filled with MAGA folks saying he's dead. He's got a primary. He's up for re-election. Most people think he's a dead man walking. He'll never return to that seat. Sean, is Thom Tillis a principled man? Is he got a death wish? Why is he out there taking all this fire when there are other Republicans who don't think Martin should get the job too?
The problem I have when you frame it that way is this is your hill to die on, right? So you've got 15 nominees, all sorts of other stuff. And suddenly now Ed Martin, and let's be honest, I mean, I've known Ed a long time. He was an RNC committee man. He led the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles organization. I mean, he's been a leader in the conservative movement for a long time.
And has a lot of friends.
Right. And the idea that I don't get this. I mean, honestly, to me, I cannot believe that you chose the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia to be the hill that you're going to die on. Yeah. I mean, it baffles me. And I have to think, to answer your question, that it's personal, that there's something that not because to me this is not like I'm going. You are going to earn the scorn of Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon and all these other guys over Ed Martin. Again, for the U.S. attorney slot, it's not like he's up to be Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And you saw the president put that truth out there. Ed was acting chief of staff of OMB before that. I mean, the president trusts Ed to execute his agenda, and I'm shocked at this one because you're right. I mean, the bottom line is if he opposes him, I don't think anyone in North Carolina cares who the U.S. attorney is for the District of Columbia, and you will lose your primary.
Yeah. He did say at one point yesterday, I saw the quote, well, I don't know what would take to change my mind, but maybe my mind could be changed, or some words to that effect. Dan, anything you want to say about this?
The only other option is he just finally had enough. I mean,
Hey,
he walked the plank on Hegseth, and I'm sure he's embarrassed.
I've been practicing this for the last couple of weeks, so I'm going to just tap into. Guess what? He caves. 3:00 today. He caves.
He might.
No.
I still think he's a dead man.
It's a very strong premonition.
He might.
3:00 today.
But
says he had a conversation and he caves. Done.
Yeah. So, and again, it's a win for MAGA in this sense, regardless of what happens with this one, Mr. Martin, which is they've shown, as they did with Joni Ernst, mess with MAGA at your peril. Any Republican senator besides Rand Paul, Susan Collins, Murkowski, and McConnell, because they've shown they're impervious. Anyone else, if you're thinking of getting out of line, think again, because this is what will happen to you. That's the message that MAGA is sending. All right. Dan said right before the show, Donald Trump, luckiest man in politics. If someone said to him, Mr. President, sir, as I say in the story, sir, if you could have any three people back in the news, who would you want? He'd say, well, let me think. You mean besides the squad, right? Yeah. Yes, sir. Besides the squad. He'd say, well, I'd like the Bush family back. I'd like Joe Biden back. I'd like Kamala Harris back. So the Bushes are back because tomorrow.
O'Donnell.
Tomorrow at the White House, they're honoring Barbara Bush with a stamp. President Bush, 43, is not going. Dora Bush is going. I have to say, I know this from reporting from 2016. They're literally Adam Schiff, Tom Edsall, anybody you want. There's literally no one, I think, ever who's lived on this planet who detested Donald Trump more than Barbara Bush. I feel comfortable in saying that. And yet they're honoring her in the White House tomorrow. Incredible. I need more backstory there. Hopefully we'll have that tomorrow. Kamala Harris back in the news because she, according to Fox News 108, is coming to New York City next week. Maybe she'll have a chance to eat at the Polo Bar again, doing a big fundraiser for the DNC in Gotham City on Tuesday. But Joe Biden, who with his wife Jill will appear on The View tomorrow, took the opportunity earlier this week, released this morning, to do an interview with a BBC radio newscaster, focusing primarily on Europe, but also talking about his decision to both run for re-election and to not run for re-election. Now, as you watch the clip, it's a little confusing when he's asked about the decision and whether he regrets it. Is he talking about the decision to not get out of the race or his decision to get out of the race? This is the first clip from the Biden interview, 106, please.
Mr. President, did you leave it too late? Should you have withdrawn earlier, given someone else a bigger chance?
I don't think it would have mattered. We left at a time when we had a good candidate. She was fully funded, and what happened was, I had become what we had set out to do. No one thought we could do. And become so successful on our agenda, it was hard to say, no, I'm going to stop now. I meant what I said when I started, that I think I'm prepared to hand this to the next generation. It's a transition government. But things moved so quickly that it made it difficult to walk away, it was a hard decision, but
regrets though?
No, I think it was the right decision. I think that it was just a difficult decision.
All right, I can call bullshit on almost every syllable, but the thing I'll focus on, he did not think Kamala Harris was a strong candidate. He didn't. So, I mean, to say, well, I'm blameless because I left behind a well-funded candidate. Yes, she had money, but she was not a strong candidate in his view. Dan, again, it's confusing to me because I don't know if they're talking about the first decision or the second, but what's your reaction to that agonizing clip?
Why is he doing this? Like, it's not helping the party and it's not helping him. You know, I just think that he lacks complete self-awareness about the damage that he did with his presidency. I mean, just across the board, and obviously the decision to run for re-election and what happened. And he just, I mean, whether it's him or some of the aides at the Harvard Institute or others, they're just, I imagine he just wants to be relevant. He misses the spotlight a little. You know, if somebody calls, he'll answer, right? Like, you want to come speak to Social Security for $100,000? I'd love to. You want to come talk to the BBC? Yes. Like, because he was in it for 50 years. But
Go on the View. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be very curious what happens tomorrow. It just makes me sad to see him doing this. I wish he would be like the Reagans that went quietly with, you know, dignity and grace into the, you know, twilight and managed those last few appearances very, very well. It's tough to watch that.
Sean.
Yeah, in the spirit of the conclave starting today, I'll temper my comments, but I would just say I'll associate it more with Dan, which is, where's Jill Biden in this? Meaning, I
He's
thought
going
that
on the View with them.
I know, but that's what I mean. That Jill has always been so protective of him and his image. The idea of allowing this to happen to me is embarrassing for him.
Yep.
Again, the idea of when you go do an interview, you should, I mean, that to me, that was going to be the number 1, 2, 3 question, right? So the idea that you look so unprepared for the most obvious question, not to mention just his physical and mental state, just doesn't look good. And this is
I'll play amateur psychiatrist and psychologist on Jill Biden. She is protective of his image, and she knows that history is going to record a very significant part of his record of being the final months of his presidency and the humiliation of being forced to give up the nomination. I think they're going for redemption. Good luck if that's the kind of quality of presentation he's going to have for redemption. Now, Republican and Democratic presidents before Donald Trump had an unwritten rule, which is you leave office and you shut up. You don't talk about public affairs very much. If you do, it's in a nonpartisan way. You certainly don't criticize your successor. Donald Trump broke that rule. He spent 4 years attacking Joe Biden personally and repeatedly. You could say, if you're a Democrat, that was bad. You could also say, well, it's okay now if we do it too. All right, that if Trump's going to do it, we're going to do it. And I would say probably better to criticize Trump for doing it rather than emulating him. Joe Biden, most of this interview was spent trashing Donald Trump. Here then, 107 is Joe Biden criticizing Donald Trump in personal terms. One example from this interview.
Listen to what Putin said when he talked about going from Kyiv into Ukraine and why. He can't stand the fact that the Russian dictatorship that he runs, that the Soviet Union has collapsed. And anybody thinks he's going to stop is just foolish.
Foolish. Called him foolish. Called him lots of other things. Never named him, but criticized him. Dan, if you were an advisor to Joe Biden, would you say, look, it's a crisis. This is an existential threat to democracy and the American way of life and the fate of the planet. You need to be out there criticizing Donald Trump, or would you say adhere to the tradition of your predecessors?
I don't think he should necessarily, or any president anymore, should adhere, because Trump just has obliterated that concept. I think it's like, we're not going to go back to the way it was in the 80s and the 90s. So in that regard, fine. But think about what Trump first started going after Biden on. It was inflation, the crisis at the border when there were hundreds of thousands of people, streaming over, and the Afghanistan withdrawal, right? Kind of real debacles. The public was on his side. He was speaking, kind of for the majority of the country. Biden, I've always thought this, even in those last few months when he was the candidate, got most animated, was most kind of with it talking about foreign policy. I think it was that NATO summit in the DC convention hall, there's a convention center that he did. It's one of his last press conferences where he got up there and was, kind of talking about it. So I think he believes it, which is fine, and I agree with a lot of what he said. But we just had an election on this, and the majority of the people do want this to end. The question is just like, how do we bring this to an end? But to me, he sounded like a bitter old man, just kind of sitting there talking about the way things should be and the way they were 20, 30 years ago. It's a different world. It's a different political dynamic. And again, who are you helping with this?
Sean.
Politically.
There's a bit of missing context in President Biden's remarks. The reason that Putin, he wants to talk about listen to Putin. Yeah, listen to Putin. Why did he invade Ukraine? Because of Biden's feckless leadership and the pullout of Afghanistan. Biden wouldn't have had to deal with this if he hadn't screwed up Afghanistan, if he hadn't allowed it. The reason, look at the record. You want to talk about what Putin said and did. He invaded Crimea under Obama. Biden, remember Obama going to Medvedev and saying, tell Vladimir I'll have more flexibility after the election. Right? Remember the reset button that Hillary Clinton carried. Remember the fact that it was under Biden that he invaded Ukraine. So if we want to look and listen to Putin, then listen and look at what he did during his tenure, during Obama's tenure. Because for 4 years under Donald Trump's first term, he did nothing. He feared Trump. So the bottom line is that Joe Biden should just go back to his beach in Delaware, sit under his umbrella, and read a book.
All right, one last topic, then we're going to get to you. Please raise your hands if you'd like to be in the conversation. Say a little prayer for every White House reporter who for the last 20 hours has been on the hook from their editors to break the story of what WTF Donald Trump was talking about when he said this yesterday.
We're going to, as you know, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. We're going to UAE and Qatar, and that'll be, I guess, Monday night. Some of you are coming with us. I think before then, we're going to have a very, very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets. And I won't tell you on what, but it's going to, and it's very positive. I'd tell you if it was negative or positive. I can't keep that out. It is really, really positive. And that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave. But it'll be one of the most important announcements that have been made in many years about a certain subject, very important subject. So you'll all be here. Mark, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I'm on the edge of my seat, actually, for the big announcement. But thank you for your hospitality and above all.
So occupational hazard, if you're someone like me who on occasion breaks news, I got about 100 requests yesterday for people to, well, just tell me what it is, Mark. I don't know what it is. But in order to stave off everybody asking me again today, I put on Twitter, I think it's a Abraham Accord 2 deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia. That's what I think it is. They're going to announce it out of the blue that they've reached a deal for a peace pact between them. Sean, what is it?
Well, first
Stipulate
of all,
you don't know, but yes.
No, but I will say this. I do love when you listen to how he teases something, and you saw Mark Carney there. It's so amazing. He incorporates every piece. It'll be one of the following days. It'll be about a subject. It'll be about this, and you're going to be very happy because it's
I'm obligated to tell you it's good news, as if there's some rule book that says he's got
right. But it was just the buildup is so phenomenal. Anyway, yeah. I love the way he gets.
Best in show.
Look, I do think it could be numerous things. That's the dirty secret. He could have a lot of things up his sleeve. It could be what you're mentioning. It could be a deal with India. And it could be something as simple as, there's a lot of rumors about renaming the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Gulf. And so it could be something of that simple nature. But yeah. I think that there's a range of things that it can be.
You want to lock in on one? We're just playing big casino here. Pick one.
I think the easy is always my default, that I think he's going to announce the Arabian Gulf as the official position of the United States.
If he does that, it falls far short of the hype. Dan.
Well, the only thing I would add is there's rumors that we're going to have a new Air Force One, a temporary new Air Force One with the new color scheme that he, of course, prefers. Perhaps he will travel to the Middle East on said temporary plane.
If it's either of those things, He is ridiculous.
Well, first of all, I'll just say this, Dan. The plane in question is beautiful, but I will say it is not. There's no way that is even close to being.
That's bigger than renaming the Gulf, which is already called that
we're
by
all
many
grabbing at
people.
No. To
I'm
Dan's
not
point,
grabbing at straws, dude. I'm
Hold
throwing
on,
down
hold on.
world history.
Sorry.
Just to be clear, what I'm
The one
betting on.
reporter on here.
Just to be clear, what I'm betting on, he cannot fly on a plane that is not equipped with the appropriate security, and that plane is not ready.
Yeah. All right. Well, when it's the Abraham Accords 2,
okay,
someone will remember I said it.
Maybe they're assigning what if they assign that version of Abraham Accord 2 in the Arabian Gulf?
Or what if they rename the Brady briefing room the Ivanka and Jared briefing room? What if that's the announcement?
Or our embassy,
Ken, welcome in. Thank you for joining.
Flag.
Welcome to Two-Way, and please tell us where you are and what's on your mind.
In Pembroke, Mass, just south of Boston.
Yes, sir.
The second time calling in. You weren't around, Mark. You were traveling in Europe, I believe, when Dan called on me last time. I have a question actually to Dan and to a certain extent, Sean. Lately, when, Mark, you've had these Democratic strategists on, okay, they all talk about how bad the economy is. Okay, they're saying the economy's bad, everything looks bad. Unemployment is at 4.2% right now. Optimum is between 3.5 and 5%. So that's pretty good. Inflation is about 2.39%, which is pretty good. So the economy isn't bad yet. Now,
well, just to be clear, and I could give you more positives, but there's also negative statistics about the economy. So it's mixed. But I'll say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I've been wanting to say this for a while. You know, John McCain in 2008 was derided for saying the fundamentals of the economy are strong. I actually think there's an argument, even with the tariffs doing the damage they've done already, that the fundamentals of the economy are pretty strong, particularly compared to the rest of the world. So
Absolutely.
you're not wrong, sir, but there are economic statistics that are negative. And I think it's misleading, I say with respect, it's misleading to cite a few stats and say, well, that's positive, so the economy's good. It's mixed.
well, yeah, I agree it's mixed. But if you listen to the Democratic strategist, it isn't mixed. It's bad.
Yeah.
And it's going to get worse. I think the comments that on your session last night or yesterday afternoon, where your two Democratic strategists were saying, I believe by the end of the year it's going to get really worse, and he's going to lose his base, and the economy is going to go in the dumper. Well, it doesn't seem like that. I think there's a lot of hype that when Rand Paul says all of the tariffs are going to be a tax and it's hurting everyday Americans. I haven't seen a lot of that yet. I mean, there are some, but they say it's slowing down at the ports, but it's some. So if you look at, Trump's not stupid. He's going to maybe pull some rabbits out of the hat. I mean, he just said he may do that this week in terms of an agreement with India or whatever. So my question is, what happens to the Democrats if, in fact, what Trump is espousing and executing on actually works? Where are the Democrats going to go?
They're back. I'll turn to Dan, but first by saying they'll take out their "We Are All Kilmar" T-shirts again and go back to that.
Yeah.
Dan, what's the answer to that one?
Ken, did you vote for Donald Trump in November?
Yes.
Okay. Did you think the economy was strong in October?
I thought it was okay.
Okay.
I mean, the
Did
economy.
you vote for Trump?
Did you
vote for Trump in 16?
Yes.
Do you think the economy was strong in September of 16?
Not so much.
You don't even have to answer it. The economy was strong in 16 when Obama handed Trump one of the better economies that a president has handed off in recent memory. Right? Clinton gave Bush a great one.
Yeah, he did.
Biden handed, if you're going to look at metrics, stock market, like et cetera, it was pretty darn strong.
Unemployment.
I mean, just go across the line, right?
But not inflation, Dan.
But by November of 2024, Inflation, even at the border, was starting to go down, just if we're going to be fair, right?
Yeah.
So the economy was horrible on November 4th and was golden on November 6th, right? It's the magic of Trump, right? You just say it enough, everyone believes it. So Democrats banged on the drum all of 2024. The economy is actually pretty good. We are better than the rest of the world. We came out of COVID better than anyone else. And as Sean said, and he was right, and it pains me as a Democrat, in people's guts, they did not feel better. They were scared. Inflation was hurting. Today, people are scared. They see tremors, kind of little tremors in the pond that they feel could become bigger. So you are right. If Trump is successful with the tariffs, Republicans will have a huge beneficiaries, and we will be in big trouble on the economy. Now, Trump makes issues every day, so it could be something else. But as I've said this, if he ends the wars, immigration, is slowing down, if this works out, the guy literally could be on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. Just a little news before Sean responds. Vice President this morning, moments ago at the security conference, says about the Russians, they're asking for a certain set of requirements, a certain set of concessions in order to end the conflict. We think they're asking for too much. It's a pretty finer point on it than you normally hear from the administration. Sean.
Well, first
on that, because of Joe Biden.
He's right. I mean, he's right, meaning JD is right, because they are asking for too much. The idea of these future security assurances on their behalf about the status of Ukraine is ridiculous. So I'm glad that the vice president's acknowledged that. And again, it continues to show what I said earlier, that Putin has overplayed his hand on this thing. Look, I will just say what I've said for a long, long time. People vote on two things, both gut visceral issues, personal security and economic security. How do you feel? So what some politician or pundit says is largely irrespective of how people feel when they go to the ballot box. They will be moved. Either they feel good about their lives. Do they feel secure when they walk down the street? Do they feel like they've got some extra money in their pocket, or they're saving, or do they not? And you cannot be convinced otherwise because somebody tells you that. So you can be affirmed in that position by somebody saying, wow, don't you agree that you feel better? So I think, look, I believe that Donald Trump, as I've said before, is betting a ton on the fact that he's going to be rewarded for looking out for America and our country and our businesses and the workers that they employ. So I'm happy and excited that he's doing this stuff, and I believe that he will prevail in this and be rewarded politically.
Okay. Ken, thank you for coming in. Grateful to you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay.
Oh, this is it. Wow, this is deliberative. Look at that. He's choosing among his children. Who will be chosen now? Look at that look.
Lawrence, I'm in a space I'm not used to here at Sirius XM, so I'm having a little visual problems. But I can see Lawrence. Lawrence, if you could unmute, that'd be excellent. Tell folks where you are who don't know and what's on your mind.
Lawrence, I say this with love. Has anyone ever said you look a little like Tim Walz?
Hold on. Before we get to that, Ken, is that the USS Constitution behind you? Just yes or no. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Lawrence, you're not having trouble unmuting?
All right, move on.
Try one more time. Can we manually unmute Lawrence? No, we can't do that. All right, Lawrence, keep trying. Try one more time.
I can't do that, sorry.
Yeah, try
Hit
one
the
more
button,
time.
Lawrence. Bottom left audio. Hit the click. It's a little microphone.
Might be windy out there.
All right, Lawrence, keep working on it. Keep working on it. If Lawrence can get it. In the meantime, young Kim, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind.
Hey, thank you. I just appreciate all the news that you guys curate for the previous day and the upcoming day. So this is fascinating because I wasn't aware of the Biden interview, and it prompted me to raise my hand. And I guess Dan raised the question, why is he doing this? And Mark, you responded, rehab. And my initial response was, rehab for what purpose? So my question to you, I think as a group is this associated with his library, right? Yes, there's this legacy issue. Is he having problem raising money for his library? and hence is that why he is doing this rehab tour with all these other speeches that he's giving?
Well, it's a good theory, and I'm sure he's going to have trouble raising money because he's never been a good fundraiser, and the way his presidency ended has certainly limited his capacity to make the case. But I don't know that it's not reporting. It's based on the history of the Bidens. I don't think they're thinking about that as much as they're thinking in a more abstract way about trying to just have his standing in the world be higher. For his entire adult life, since he was married to Jill Biden, their entire sense of professional and to some extent personal self was his treatment by the political and media class. How they treated him and making money through Biden Inc. How they treated him was where he got his sense of value, his sense of self, his sense of purpose. And they're not treating him well now. And so I think they think by doing this kind of thing, by taking what they consider to be low-hanging fruit, which is criticizing Trump about foreign policy, by going on The View, the friendliest possible audience they could get, although I wouldn't be surprised if one of the ladies darted from the shadows and asked hard questions. We'll see. They think that they can bring back their source of like sustenance for half a decade, which was, again, the approval, the status within the political media industrial complex. Dan.
Yeah, and I also just think, and Mark alluded to this earlier, you can't underestimate, he probably left the White House in worse shape than any president, maybe since Nixon, just in terms of how his own party felt, how the country saw him. The fact that he and Jill went to the DNC and said, we want to be helpful rebuilding the party was one of the most tone deaf things. I mean, friends of mine who are still in politics were stunned. Like, how do we say to them, sir, are you out of your you-know-what mind? In a nice, polite, respectful way that you would say that to an ex-president, because nobody wants him out there helping the party right now. They don't want him at fundraisers because you know what the donors are going to ask? The same thing that everyone else on here would want to ask him about, why did you do this? And, what were you thinking about running, and just all of this stuff. Nobody wants to hear who he thinks should be the nominee in 2028. Nobody wants to hear his thoughts on how we're going to win back the House in the midterms. He was a terrible politician. I mean, he just was. So I just think they lack self-awareness. They want to be in the spotlight for the reasons Mark said. And I think they believe that they can rehabilitate him when it just makes it worse, in my opinion.
Sean.
I get a kick out of what a great week this has been. Biden comes out and gives this speech. Kamala shows up at the Met Gallery after going to the Polo Lounge. Tim Walz is code talking at Harvard. AOC says she's not going to run for the ranking member slot on oversight. I mean, this is, to me, I'm just like, could it get any better?
No one bats 1,000, Sean.
We're batting pretty in the 9.
All right.
We're Hall of Fame batting right now.
Young Kim, thank you. Lawrence, because miracles never cease, unmuted. Lawrence, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind.
Hi, I live in England. I'm a Democrat. I just wanted to comment on the media bias that you guys have been talking about.
Yes, sir.
I moved over here in '92, and the mainstream press has changed quite a lot in 30 years. And I think it accelerated during COVID, but I think it was pretty much heading that way anyway. And the state of play today for me, it feels like the media think they are the unofficial spokespeople for a political party, which I think makes it a lot easier to understand the hostility from the media when they're interviewing a politician.
Lawrence, let me ask you a question, Lawrence, and you're not necessarily qualified to answer. I'm going to ask you to speculate, but I'll be curious to know what you think. If you made those remarks to the publishers of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the presidents of NBC News, CBS News, and ABC News, what do you think they'd say to you?
I don't think they disagree. I actually think that they believe their function is to act as the unofficial spokespeople for a political party.
So
I don't think they see themselves as.
I can tell you that all three of those people would deny it. They would deny it indignantly. So now my question to you is, what is it that they don't see that you see?
I think a bit of it is because I live over here. I go back to the U.S. a few times a year. So it's different for me to hear an American talking to other Americans about what's going on in America. There's a sound to it. So I go back a few times a year and I can hear that. And over 30 years, it's just changed.
Next time you come, bring me some Cadbury eggs. We don't have those over here. Sean, a comment or question for Lawrence?
I'm going to ask this in a different way. As a Democrat, why do you not get reaffirmed by that? Like, I'm intrigued by your concern. Most Democrats are in the bucket that Mark described. I mean,
I guess my concern. I'm an American.
No, I get it, and I appreciate that. That's why I'm asking.
I don't actually think you do. It's dangerous to not have a free and skeptical press. I don't think we have one. Somebody said yesterday that the news is overwhelmingly negative about coverage of the White House. Well, that's not true. If you're listening to Fox News, it's 100% positive. So you can see the difference. I mean, the news is kind of whatever you want it to be, depending on who you're going to listen to, which is horseshit. It's not what press is supposed to be. It's dangerous. I think where we find ourselves is in a very bad spot. I think it's dangerous.
Well,
not necessarily Lawrence, whether or not I'm a Democrat or not's irrelevant.
No, it is relevant, because this is why I asked, because I think you're spot on. I actually share exactly what you said. I think my view is that, we have the freedom of press, we have the freedom of assembly. And so if someone wants to be a cheerleader, great. If someone wants to be a critic, great. But the purpose of news is to inform and to be straight. And so I actually share and associate my beliefs with your comments. And that's why I asked, because most Democrats, I think, would associate themselves with the way that Mark described it. They don't see it. I give you a lot of credit for actually seeing the purpose of it, because I don't think a lot of people do share that and have your perspective as somebody who's able to see it from the outside.
I tend to agree with that, but I think it's because it's like the boiling frog, where you don't really realize how much things are changing because you're constantly adapting. Over 30 years, it's incremental.
I think the free market's going to take care of it. I mean, these companies are all struggling. They're losing audience. They're losing viewers. Their monetization models are under enormous duress. You're seeing the rise.
I don't see that as good.
Well, no, I do, because I believe in the Darwinian theory. Like, new things are going to emerge. You have new tribal,
but not necessarily good things.
Well, but hold on a second.
Just to be clear, I think it's damaged the Republican Party to have this kind of bias, but it's been devastating to my party.
Yeah, Lawrence, I'm sorry, we got to stop there just because we're getting to time. We've got some stuff to cover, but I'm grateful to you for coming on, and we hope you'll come back and continue. And don't forget the Cadbury eggs.
Okay.
Thank you. Sean, what do you have on tonight?
Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne. We're going to talk a little reconciliation and tariffs. So she is a shining star in the Republican conference, and I'm looking forward to getting her take.
Okay. Real quick, noon today. Remember, Meghan McCain's show renamed Citizen McCain. New time, noon Eastern. Today, Billy Binion of Reason Magazine. Join Meghan at noon live. If you want to join live on the platform, go to my Substack or the two-way website to sign up, and you can watch it stream live or on demand on Meghan's YouTube channel. Please do that. I'll be on 6 o'clock tonight, two-way tonight. My interview with Rand Paul and conversation about the future of Democratic Party and my reporting on what it takes to be in the ear of Donald Trump, all available now on Next Up on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. That dropped yesterday. And don't forget, it's now stop submitting to the People's Poll, because that's passed. The deadline is in 1 minute. In 2 minutes, I'll be on with Michael Smerconish on Sirius XM. And then finally, thanks to all of you who've written in to the invest opportunity to be an investor in two-way. And again, apologies for not getting back to all of you in a timely fashion. We've had many inquiries for interest, and the round is closing soon. But if you have an interest in making a serious investment in Two-Way, send an email to invest@twoway.tv. Tell us the range that might be interested in investing after you see our materials, but tell us the range. And again, grateful to all of you who've written in, and apologies to not being able to get back to everybody, but we will. And we're grateful for your interest and your support and your encouragement. We'll be back in 23 hours with this program, and I'll see you at 6.
I got to thank, by the way, Randy. Randy, just big shout out. He Venmoed me $10 yesterday.
Yeah.
I'll share that. I'm going to give that to a charity of choice, though. I feel bad taking that, but it was a joke. So don't keep sending me Venmo money.
Right.
But thank you, Randy.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. I'll see you at 6.